How's everybody doing? Sleepy. I'll wake you up. Uh-oh. Before we start, we're going to get Mr. T-Fang to report back on his sleep habits. All right, so, good morning. This is the official meeting of the Public Safety Committee. I'm the chair, Mitchell Englander. Friday, November 4th, 2011. It is 8:40. We're going to start right away with the consent calendar. I am joined by none of my colleagues yet this morning. I did have word from Mr. Zine that he will not make it. Something urgent came up this morning, and so he cannot be present. Therefore, we'll go on consent from the chair on items 1, 2, 7, 9, 10, 13, 15, 16, 17, and 18 will be on consent. We'll go ahead and take items 4 and 5 and keep them on the desk for the next meeting. And so we'll hold those items for the next meeting. And that should have cleared the room a little bit, but you're all just still real interested in this committee. We'll go ahead and hear the first item then on item 3. And I'm sorry, let's go ahead and hold 14 on the desk as well. Okay. And bring those back with items 4 and 5 for the next meeting. Number 14? Number 14, yes, sir. We're going to continue 14. I'm sorry? We're going to continue number 14? Continue 14 as well. Okay. Okay. Which is logical. And then we will start with item 3.
Morning, John White, City Clerk. Item 3, communication from the mayor relative to proposed budget modifications and financial transactions needed to close out the fiscal year 2007 Urban Area Security Initiative Grant Award from DOJ. Pardon me, from the Department of Homeland Security.
Morning.
Good morning.
So if you could tell us what these closeouts are first by stating who you are, and so we can put all that on the record as well.
Maria Ramos with Office of the CAO. Basically, the mayor's office is just requesting the authority to modify the 2007 Urban Areas Security Initiative grant budget and execute financial transactions associated to the grant, as well as extend the grant performance period in order to complete the approved projects under the UASI grant.
Okay, and so, and just looking through, this was, it's closing out a total of $60 million?
Correct. My name is Freya Robayo. I'm the interim grants director for the mayor's office.
Fantastic. Can you give us a highlight of where these monies were spent and were they, and when it's due to be audited? And have we done our internal audits on these as well to ensure that there's full reimbursement?
We were audited on the UASI 07 grant through the city's controller's office. Every fiscal year, we do go through the single audit. In terms of the grantor, we were audited on the 07 grant. I want to say about a year ago.
Okay. And if you can walk us through just some of the highlights of where the funds were spent.
Okay.
And are there any ongoing costs that were continuing in terms of programmatic or equipment maintenance that were purchased or acquired through the grant that are not part of the grant?
We the projects are regional, and for the most part, projects are funded through multiple UASI grant years in addition to other grants. Maintenance costs are allowable under the Urban Area Security Initiative grant.
So I guess my question is, are there any, though, programs at all that are not, or that fall outside of either this or the continuation of the grants, which are going to be absorbed either by the department or the city? And is that ever looked at in an audit to make that determination?
One of the things that our subrecipients do look at is sustainability of the projects. And anytime they put forth projects to be funded out of the grant, the question is just making sure that it is sustainable, whether it's, through the grants and whether their city are able to absorb the costs.
And to touch briefly, I'm Assistant Chief Michael Little from our Homeland Security Division. And regarding some of those programs, principally to bring our chief officers, command level officers to a level that's compliant with the National Incident Management System and also the National Response Framework, we provided enhanced incident management and unified command classes to just about all of our chief officers. That was probably the most significant. It enhances our capability to function in a unified command posture with other agencies, as well as collaborate with the federal government and state resources on significant incidents. Other training that was accomplished enhances our capabilities in the CBRNE arena. That's chemical, bio, rad, nuke, and explosive incident type responses, which are really emerging threats in the aftermath of 9/11 and some of the terrorist threats that we've been facing since then. Other training that we've received or that we've provided has been in the area of advanced marine firefighting training. We've also provided some enhanced equipment to those specialized assets that would manage WMD types of incidents and other incidents of national significance, major earthquakes, catastrophic forest fires, and so forth.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and move this file and accept it as a communication from the chair to close out the 2007 UOSI grant.
Councilman, there's a CAO report that's been submitted. Do you wish to approve the CAO recommendations?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Next item is item 6, Department of Transportation and consultation with the Police Department to present verbal report for discussion only the proposed actions necessary to authorize OPGs to accept payment of parking violation fines issued by the City of Los Angeles.
Morning.
Good morning. Robert Andalon, the Department of Transportation. We're here to answer your questions and present some of the information that we've been working with the OPGs. At the behest of the Mayor's Office, we started a program early part of 2011 to look at what we could do with the OPGs to collect parking citations for those vehicles that are impounded for other reasons but have 5 or more delinquent tickets. Since that time, we started in Hollywood, the OPG there in February, and the remaining garages came online in April. Since that time, we've held 375 vehicles that were subsequently released because of the payments received. The amounts collected were approximately $32,000 at the OPGs and an additional $35,000 that was paid at
How many,
DMV.
sorry, since 2011, how many total vehicles?
375.
And these were for 5 or more.
Correct.
Why only 5 or more?
That's what the law allows us to do,
State law?
state law.
Okay.
And we were able to collect $32,000 at the OPGs and an additional $35,000 through DMV. Since many of the vehicles probably had out-of-date registration, they had to go to DMV and pay for the registration. And while they're there, they also pay for their outstanding parking tickets.
So, I'm sorry, we collected $32,000 in addition on those 5 or more. Explain the makeup of that $32,000.
The $32,000 would be for outstanding parking citations.
And we collected those at the OPGs, but
At the
they don't
OPGs.
collect on parking or citations. That doesn't,
We collected in the sense that the OPGs held their vehicles and they wouldn't be released until $32,000 was paid.
Richard T. Fink, Councilman, Executive Director of the Police Commission. If I can explain operationally how that takes place. As a part of this project, working with the city's parking vendor and DOT, we created an interface and we gave access to the OPGs to the database of the city parking violations. The 5 or more are only 5 or more citations issued in the City of Los Angeles. under the vehicle code, you can only hold the vehicle if you have 5 or more citations issued by the jurisdiction that has the vehicle. So citations from Santa Monica, Culver City would not apply.
Okay.
So with this database interface, if a vehicle comes in that's been booted by DOT, right away we know that has 5 or more because they booted the vehicle and it's brought in for that particular violation. A vehicle that might be impounded for other reasons, the OPGs will run that license plate and will find from all of those vehicles if they have 5 or more. At that point in time, when the registered owner comes to pick up the vehicle, they'll say, we cannot release the vehicle, you have 5 or more citations, and then they will facilitate how those people can make contact to the vendor to pay those citations. That could be either by going in person to one of the available kiosks that the city currently has.
How many kiosks do we have?
Actually, we have one kiosk, but more than likely they go to the payment centers because they have to pay for the citations, either a full payment, credit card payment, or ask for an installment plan.
So if they...
Let me just get the picture on this. So, somebody has their car impounded. Let's start with the 5 or more, and we'll get into the others in a minute. And we have a parking vendor, so they don't go to the city. Who's the parking vendor?
ACS, Affiliated State and Local Solutions.
ACS. Okay. So we have a parking vendor,
Parking citation processing.
citation processor. Got it. And somebody has their vehicle impounded. They go to the official police garage to go pay the impound and pick it up. They're only told about citations there that are 5 or more. Are they instructed at the window that they might have 1 or 2, or are they only instructed that they have 5 or more?
They're instructed if they have any citations. However, we cannot continue to hold the vehicle if there are less than 5.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that as well. Just making a note. Give me 1 sec. Okay. Then, they're told that if there's 5 or more, let's just follow that logic for a second. They have to leave there and go to one of these, how many locations did you say?
Four different payment offices.
4 offices.
One of 4, yes.
One of 4 offices.
Or
They wouldn't have to go to all 4. They'd have to
no,
go to
they
one.
either go to one of the 4 payment offices,
Okay.
or pay online or pay by phone.
Okay.
Any of the amount that's due on the delinquent parking citations.
Got it. And I'm assuming they have to get some kind of certificate to show that they've paid it, so they can come back to the OPG to show it's clear.
That's the interface that the OPGs would have access to. As soon as that payment is made, either online, by phone, or in person, it updates the system. The OPG then can access that system. It updates every minute or 2, I believe, 2 minutes at the most. So the OPG can review that and see that citations are cleared, and then release the vehicle.
There's another thing I'm going to come back to. OPG system updates. Okay. So basically, the average folk in the city of LA, we've got 4 of these in the entire city of 465 square miles. What are the hours of these offices?
9 to 5.
9 to 5. Okay, so somebody gets their car towed. They have to take a bus or a taxi, rely on a friend, walk to one of these OPGs. After they've gone back and got their cashier's check from the bank and took the day off work, they go down to one of these things, they find one of the OPG's hours at the window to get their vehicle back.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they're available.
24 hours a day.
Yes.
So they get down there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever the case may be, or they do it on their lunch hour, in which case they would just want to go down and pick up their vehicle and go back to work. Then when they do that, they're told, I'm sorry, you've got 5 citations or more, we cannot release the vehicle, but you cannot pay here. So you have to go to one of these other 4 offices that are probably, there's a good chance, as big as the city might be, or is, that they have to go somewhere else, far away, hopefully get another ride, maybe miss work again, maybe take off another day. Let's assume for a second they have to take another day off work. and they get there at 4 o'clock, there's no way they can make it to one of these 4 locations to pay it on time. Perhaps they don't even have the sufficient funds, and a lot of people don't have credit cards or they're maxed out in this day and age. Do we charge them for another day of impound?
Yes.
If they didn't? Yes. And it could be the case where it's 2 or 3 more days if they just don't have the resources or funds or the ability to get to the other location. Oftentimes it's a transportation nightmare in the city, and it could be as far as 20 or 30 miles away if there's only 4 of these, easily, with that kind of radius. I'm just trying to figure this out from not only a collection and revenue perspective from the city, but more importantly, consumer friendliness and how we're sort of looking at the big picture and how this can function in everyday life. So with that, let's assume for a second they call up or they pay it online. It was suggested that the OPG system updates every few minutes, and the OPGs can check right away that they paid it online. Since they're open 24 hours, let's take it a step up and say, well, with technology, let's assume that this person is a little more well off than the average person in the city of LA, where they have a home computer and internet access and credit cards, and they can simply go home and pay it, come right back to the OPG. The OPG, in fact, as a reserve officer, I've had to deal with this. I've gotten these complaints, and I've gotten these also complaints from constituents. They don't update every few minutes. The system updates every 24 hours, once. I believe it's at midnight, where they get a flag of only the 5 or more. It also doesn't reflect, just to make everybody aware, from what I've been told, and my recollection, just being out in the field and talking to folks on routine patrol, and people that try to talk you out of writing that ticket, saying I've already got a couple tickets and it's a nightmare, I just got my car out of impound and this is what I've had to go through. And so I could be wrong, but what I've been told is that because of the state law, it's 5 or more is the only way we can hold a vehicle. But the OPGs don't have access if it's 1, 2, or 3 tickets. It only shows on their system at 5 or more. There's some kind of programming, I believe, that was done with this parking vendor, an agreement that the city agreed to, and the parking vendor and the OPGs, that it would only pull, and it was programmed to pull at 5 or more and send that information to the OPGs, because that was the nexus in which they can hold a vehicle.
That's not my understanding, but I could be wrong.
Okay, so, well, we could both be wrong. So we'll let the record flow that show that we can both be wrong.
If I could have Detective Ben Jones come forward he's the OPG coordinator, he probably could answer the specific questions.
From what I understand, that the OPGs can see that there's multiple tickets on it, but the only ones that are flagged to be held are the ones that have 5 or more per the state law.
Right, and so what I'm saying is that, from my understanding, they can only see that if there are multiple tickets, meaning 5 or more. It only flags it and lets them know if there's 5 or more.
Right, where it'd stop it, but they can actually see the number.
But they can't collect any of the money?
No.
No, sir.
Okay.
The optimal piece for this, and I guess if I could just respond from our perspective as the OPG coordinators, the optimal perspective for us would be that the contract vendor would have standalone terminals in each of the 18 OPGs. Mm-hmm. That have a direct link to ACS, who is the contracted vendor for the city.
But if the OPGs are already licensed contractors with the city, and they're already set up to see the system, take credit cards and checks or cash, how do you go to a kiosk and pay cash? Can you do that?
Yes, there are kiosks that do accept cash.
There are these ACS terminals?
The one kiosk that we have.
We have one kiosk?
Yes.
And I would imagine there's a tremendous cost in setting up these kiosks and processing them, and, I mean, it would be a lot to ask, maybe in the next RFP. When's the RFP come out for this?
Actually, we've sent it out for peer review, and one of the optional services was to include kiosk at OPGs, so there would be a pricing opportunity for the vendors to advise us as to what it would cost, and then the city would determine if there's a cost-benefit advantage to doing that.
Okay, and it's out for peer review. We haven't put it out yet?
No.
Can I get a report back on, or we can even do it in closed session, on where we're at with the RFP and some of the elements on it, at least to get an overview on? I want to make sure we have some of these customer service friendly initiatives put in there as well.
One of the other issues, sir, is that let's say an individual goes up and there's $1,000 in parking citations, and they want to resolve that. If they go to one of the payment centers with DOT, they can enter into a payment plan. But that's only due to going there, arranging, making
Sure.
this payment plan. So they can do
Through
that
DOT.
kind of a situation through
Right.
DOT.
But meanwhile, right now, it's if you have 5 or more citations and you can't get your car out of the OPG at that time, right there on the spot, and you don't have access to a computer or the ability to put it on a credit card that way, you can go to the bank and withdraw money, but the 4 offices are closed. You're then going to pay for another day of impound.
That's correct.
Simply because we didn't, okay. Well, moving forward in this day and age, is there a reason that, I mean, we trust the OPGs and they're licensed. I'm just thinking if this might be a better alternative or not if we've explored it, rather than a kiosk for them to collect it.
Well, I think that when we initially set up this program for the 5 or more, we did discuss about some of the operational concerns, the additional reconciling and balancing that would have to occur at each of the OPGs that accepted cash, and then we would have to have the vendor go and pick up the money on a daily basis to deposit it into the city funds, and they would have to balance as well.
But that's all done electronically nowadays anyway. People don't actually send couriers around. It's all deposited nightly in the
If they're
bank
picking up
and
cash, they
wire transfers and the like.
if they're
Those are
picking-
things that can be electronically fund transferred on a regular basis as well.
Well, it's something that we could explore. It's at the time that we had this discussion.
Unless we still have the Pony Express system, we can use that.
We could, but again, it comes down, at the time we had the discussion, this was one of the issues that was brought up, and so it wasn't, if the electronic transfers was an option, I don't think it was fully explored, and I think there was some reluctance to go forward to accepting cash and having additional audit responsibilities on both sides.
Yeah, but I don't, here's the thing. I'm all about making it easier and less expensive on the consumer, on the residents of the city. I don't have any sympathy for the companies or the OPGs or ACS if it's a little more work for them to do or they have to go through another audit. When we're talking about the residents having to pay for either taking another day off work, in addition to impound charges, in addition to, all the other things that go along with this. Late fees and penalties on the tickets that are adding up. When there's a simple solution at hand that you have clearly identified as an issue, which I applaud you for, so thank you for that. And then seems to be a simple solution that isn't that complicated, where they're right there at the window. The ACS can provide easily to the database the ones that are 5 or fewer as well. They can notify them, oh, by the way, you've got 4. We can't hold it, but we'll want to let you know you can get your car. You can be right back here next week if you get another parking ticket, or if you're cited for tinted windows, or if you're cited for having not having a front plate, or not feeding the meter, or whatever that might be. It comes up as a flag that you have 5 now. Since you're sitting at 4, you could be right back here and have to pay for impound and tow fees once again. So I want to let you know you can pay right here on the spot. It's a matter of convenience, helping them. It's not revenue to the city. It's not, those tickets are going to be sitting there no matter what. We'll get the revenue one day. That's not the issue. It's making it easier. So if these companies have to go through an additional step of wire transferring funds, of logging it, of going through an audit, so be it. I'd like to see us try to take a different approach and be a little more friendly, if we could, and user-friendly to these folks that are getting citations. Many people get citations, they're not even aware of it. The ticket blows off, their spouse or somebody borrowed the car, and they have the citation and they didn't tell them about it. I mean, we've heard all kinds of stories as police officers, that, and DOT is sitting here as well. You've heard every story, I'm sure, imaginable. You can probably write a great book, and it happens. And so I think we're in a day and age where we have to be a little more friendly. I would not wait for the RFP. I would ask, because that could be another year if it comes out in a month or 2 or 3 if it's not ready, and then we allow time for responses, and it's got to go through review. And then, as we all know, everything's politicized in the city, and we'll get 400 lobbyists on every contract coming in to negotiate and blow each other up. And who knows what happens then, and we'll probably end up having to file an extension with the current provider, and it'll go on for another 2 years. So, not knowing, and that's in a perfect world, but hopefully that doesn't happen. We'll have it, because we have great staff, and it'll sail right through smoothly. But just in case, I would suggest that we go back to the current vendor. ACS has already licensed garages with the city, with the police department. They are already good. They already go through audits. They already have the systems in place to accept payments on behalf of the city. They already have access, as what you stated, to the ACS system. I'd like to find out and verify if they have access to 5 or fewer, not just the 5 or more, and we can double check that, and report back on the ability to either amend their existing contract or, out of the kindness of their heart, figure out a system to sit with the OPGs. There's an association, I believe. They can sit with the association and figure out there's got to be some cost, I would think, on the OPGs in processing this as well, in terms of if you mention an audit or this or that. They can figure out something that it's at least cost neutral to them. If they're accepting credit cards, there's going to be a credit card fee from the bank. So something that's cost neutral, that's fair, and make it simple, so we don't have to wait to figure out these additional kiosks and maintenance and operations and phone lines. A kiosk has a phone line, I would imagine. So there's time and infrastructure, and right now they can do this, I would think, almost immediately. It's not brain surgery, and I want to make it easier for these folks that are getting these citations. So if we can look back at those things and report back to this committee, how much time do you think it would take to look into those and report back on how to implement this program?
As to the OPGs, we can discuss this with them. But again, I think I would go back to the piece that I believe that the best way to facilitate this, to ensure that whatever the system database is that is available, if there's a direct link, a standalone terminal from the vendor who processes the parking citations, that would be at each of the 18 OPGs, then that individual could go right to that device, do that, take care of their payment right there themselves, and we would remove the OPGs from that. If that is not possible, then we would look secondly at the step of having the OPGs be the individuals who accept the money for the city, and then, as you indicated, potentially look at a service fee, et cetera, to facilitate that for the city. But
I'd rather look at both.
That's what
I'm not saying, but I'm already hearing a preference on one rather than the other. I'd look at the pros and cons on both, and, you know, how many times have you gone up to an ATM machine and it's out of order? And then what happens? I mean, if you've got a human at a counter that you're talking to that can walk you through and take a payment, where if they walk over to a kiosk that doesn't work or is down for multiple reasons, or how many times have you put a dollar bill into a machine and it doesn't take it and it spits it out? You've got all kinds of issues there. You know, with the human element, if it's audited anyway and we go through that, it seems like that might be preferred and at less cost. So I would, and there could be pros and cons, but I wouldn't put one above the other and say if it doesn't work, we'll look at the other. I would look at
that, sir. I'm suggesting we'd look at both of them, but I think the preference that we would have from as the contract administrator, if there was going to be the ability of an OPG themselves to accept cash and or to do the transactions of that, we would like the auditing of all of that piece to be the responsibility of DOT and ACS, since we would not have access to that information. So that would not be a part of an audit responsibility that we would take on as a contract administrator. That would be a piece that DOT and their vendor would be responsible for. So we can, if we can move forward with that, then that gets us to a place that we're not dealing with the audit piece and responsibility for all the cash that would go.
I agree with that. Yes, the department should be responsible as well as the vendor. And if they can work this out with the OPGs, again, it's something I think they could do immediately. It could be included certainly in the RFP moving forward on any other, and looking at how to work this out, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't move forward now with what we have. We have existing contracts, we have existing infrastructure, we have existing personnel, and I think, you know, it really sends the message of being just more friendly and accessible and saving people money, and saving them a headache of having to run around the city trying to pay this. So I think it looks like a great opportunity. I would think it's also in the best interest of the contractor I'm assuming they get paid on collections, as most. I don't know how all that works. I guess I'm going to learn more about that if an RFP is coming out. I don't know how their contract works and how they're paid, but I would assume it's in their best interest to try to collect immediately and quickly as well. And so let's look at that. How much time would you think you need to come back with those solutions for implementation? 2 weeks, 30 days?
We could come back to you in a couple of weeks from the
Couple
OPG
weeks?
perspective, and just meeting with them and working through
OPGs
some of the
and
issues.
ACS?
I don't see that as a huge hill for us to deal with.
Terrific.
Just to implement that.
Okay. So why don't we go ahead and we'll give it 2 weeks, and we'll put it on the,
So just to clarify, in 2 weeks, you're looking for what would be the work plan if we were to do this?
yes,
Okay.
if that's reasonable. I don't want to ask of anything that's not reasonable. If you need more time,
I prefer, to be honest, 30 days.
30 days?
Yeah.
30 days. You got it. Okay.
We'll begin our work.
Well, two weeks in city time is like 6 months. I mean, it's okay. 30 days. Be great. Terrific. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I think the people of Los Angeles and the residents will appreciate this as well, particularly those who are going through these headaches and nightmares of trying to get their cars out of impound. So I appreciate that. We'll take the next item.
Do you wish to take items 8, 11, and 12 together?
Put my glasses on and I'll tell you in a second. Yes.
They are all city clerk reports relative to the status of various trust funds.
We can actually take 8, 11, and 12. Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good morning, council members. Ruben Veramontes with the City Clerk's Office. We're here to report on item number 8, which is the Council District 15 and 8 LAPD Southeast Division Police Assistance Trust Fund for fiscal year 2010. The trust fund was established in 1995 for the receipt, retention, and disbursement of gifts, contributions, and bequests for assistance in operation of the LAPD Southeast Division. Per Council File 092917, this trust fund was closed by the Controller's Office at the end of fiscal year 2010 due to inactivity. However, an ordinance repealing the trust fund has not yet been adopted. At the end of fiscal year 2010, there was a $0 balance on the trust fund.
What were these trust funds originally established for, and where did the revenue come from?
The historical background on these, they were for the retention and disbursement of gifts, contribution, and bequests. My recollection, this is an older trust fund, but in my recollection, there hasn't been any activity since the inception of the trust fund, but I can go back and look at the historical background on that.
And is there a reason for then repealing the ordinance and closing out the trust funds?
There was a council motion that had requested that the Controller's Office look at all the trust funds that had no activity for various years, and they reported back on a list of trust funds that should be closed due to this fact, and this was one of them.
Okay, what we did have is that already went on consent, that I'll ask you about, though, is the other trust funds in the back had some had larger amounts, most of them were insignificant, smaller amounts, and don't know the historic nexus between maintaining those and closing these other ones out, if there is one. There doesn't seem to be a lot of activity in any of these. So
Yeah,
I'm
that
trying
would
to
just
figure
have to be a policy decision at that point.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and close these ones out. We'll keep the other ones open since we moved them on consent. There was one, the Illegal Dumping Reward Trust Fund, had a $0 balance, but wasn't asked to be, it was only a report back on the balance. It's a $0 balance. We also have the CD9 Benefit Trust Fund balance of 0, and the CD4 Public Trust Fund balance of 0. Was there a reason not to close those ones out?
On the illegal dumping, there's always rewards that are paid on a continuous basis. It's just dependent on what rewards are being offered. When the rewards are approved by council, at that time we get the money appropriated into the trust fund. So that's a continuing project when it comes to the illegal dumping. On the other ones, specifically, I believe there was activity in the last couple of years, whereas these ones that are being recommended for closure, it's been quite a time since there's been any activity in the trust funds.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and move those.
So you wish to note and file the city clerk reports and also request ordinances to close out those 3 trust funds?
That's correct.
Very good. Thank you.
That should conclude the agenda. And since we don't have a quorum, We don't have public comment. So that should conclude the meeting.
It does.
Okay, thank you.